Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Mr. Football Vincent Turner. Today, I have my college football / pro football legend special. Today, I'm going to talk about Bill Stanfill, defensive end out of the University of Georgia. So if you like the video today, please come in and share it. We'll surely appreciate it here on 100 Yards Football. And to my producer, who's making it happen this morning, Mr. Logan Landers. Bill Stanfill, the University of Georgia, one of the most renowned, best pound-for-pound football players that played at the University of Georgia in the 1960s. He really kind of set the foundation of what the Georgia program is right now in the present with Kirby Smart and the Dogs winning the national championship. And the presence of 15 Georgia players getting drafted in this past weekend 2022 NFL draft. So keep it simply said, I got a legend that I'm going to talk about that played a big part in Georgia football history. And I tell you what, with all the friends that I have as Georgia football fans, to Paige Bridgman, to Joseph Taylor, it's a good time to be a dog, as they tell me all the time. But let me get to Mr. Stanfill. Came in 1966 as one of the most renowned, highly recruited classes under Vince Dooley. It was Vince Dooley first class that really made a stamp in Georgia football. And Mr. Stanfill came in with Garland Walker, Kent Lawrence, Steve Greer, and they changed the foundation of Georgia football. But Mr. Stanfill was a guy coming out of Cairo, Georgia, down there in South Georgia. Well, you got history from that small town where you already had Willie Harris that played Major League Baseball. You had the great Jackie Robinson that was born, a safety that played for the Dallas Cowboys by the name of J.J. Wilcox, and Teresa Edwards. We all know about her, a former Georgia great and an Olympic champion in women's basketball. But this young man coming out of Cairo, Georgia, might have been one of the most outstanding athletes and might have been the best athlete. In high school, he was Class AA Lineman of the Year, won a basketball state championship, played center, and won the he was a state discing champion. Man, he was a football player. And he was part from 1966 to 1968 when Georgia was making a stamp in the SEC. Even though Alabama under Burr Brown was doing a lot of great things back then, but the University of Georgia was making a stamp. And Mr. Stanfill, in his 3 years at Georgia, his college record was 26-2. 26-2. 26 wins, 6 losses, and 2 ties. He won the 1968 Atlas Trophy. And he was all SEC 1966, 1967, 1968, with 2 conference championships in 1966 and 1968, and most of all, 2 major bowls. But what I liked about Mr. Stanfill was his skill set. Speed, size, A+. The range of playing a defensive end, A+. Physical, A+. Toughness, A+. And very competitive, A+. Everything that Vince Dooley, at the time the head coach of Georgia, wanted in a football player. But what I remember most of all about Mr. Stanfill of Georgia at that time, he was highly recruited. It came down between Auburn, Georgia, and Florida State. But he always said he wanted to be a dog. And also in that recruiting class, Jake Scott, who was a phenomenal football player, him and Mr. Stanfill were best friends. But, in all speaking, I want to talk about Mr. Stanfill's sophomore year, 1966, the year where Texas El Paso won the college national basketball championship with an all-starting black African-American starting 5. You had college football that was upturned because you had Michigan State with Jimmy Ray and George Webster claiming they were number 1. You had Notre Dame with Alan Page, Rocky Bleier claiming they were number 1. And, of course, Alabama under the snake man from Redneck Riviera, Foley, Alabama, Ken Stabler, and Ray Perkins, who played wide receiver, ended up being the head coach of the New York Giants. And 66, those 3 teams saying they were number 1. And then you had the Florida Gators under the ball coach, Johnson City, Tennessee, Steve Spurrier, doing his thing with the Florida Gators. And that year, 66, that annual Florida and Georgia game had heavy implications. Florida was also in that mix of a team that was talking about the national championship. And they had a quarterback who, before that game in October, that already had won the Heisman. And Steve Spurrier won it that year. But to me, that 1966 game against Florida that year, that was a very turnstile and a very important part in Georgia football history. The Dogs were down 10-3 at halftime to the Florida Gators. And they came out in the second half and they put a whoop ass on Steve Spurrier and that D-line led by Bill Stanfill and Steve Greer and George Patton ended Florida's dream of being number one. Steve Spurrier, I think, had a crazy stat line. He was 16 of 29, 133 yards. I think he threw 2 picks. I think he threw a pick six in that game. But it was Bill Stanfill at sophomore that wreaked havoc. That's what I remember about his college career. That 66 game against Florida, how it turned the state of Georgia upside down, and Georgia became recognized as a football program in the SEC under a coach by the name of Vince Dooley. That game was a standing point in Georgia football history. Then think about this. Mr. Stanfill is drafted by the Miami Dolphins. Goes on and has a great pro career. And right now, arguably, we love the game of professional football, but it's no question about it. It's only been one undefeated team out of pro football, and it's the 1972 Miami Dolphins. And Bill Stanfill was a part of that defense and part of that football team. They went undefeated 17-0. Larry Little, Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, Bob Greasy out of Purdue University, Nick Bonaconte out of Notre Dame, Manny Fernandez, Utah State, Jake Scott of Georgia, and Dick Anderson of Colorado. And Jake Scott, who's Bill Stanfield's best friend, who would ever thought they would end up as teammates on arguably the greatest football team in pro football history and the only undefeated team in pro football history. And the stat that stuck out to me most about that 1972 team and that defense that was nicknamed the No Name was this right here. You had the stars everybody talking about, Fernandez, Bonaconte, Scott, Anderson, but they didn't talk about Bill Stanfill. And Bill Stanfill led a defense that played 1,020 minutes. But the Dolphins only trailed for 122 minutes that year, 51 seconds. And who was the unsung hero on that Miami team? It was Bill Stanfill, baby. Bill Stanfill. Oh, my God. A guy that won back-to-back Super Bowl championships, one of the most unappreciated defensive players on the Miami Dolphins team. Mr. Stanfill had a great, great pro career. Outstanding, man. 1973, led the league in sacks, had 18 sacks, had a great, great college career, great pro career. But 1973 was special for him. 18 sacks, and the Dolphins went on and won back-to-back Super Bowls. Played in 191 games, 69 career sacks. Left Miami as their all-time sack leader until Jason Taylor broke the record. But the most I understand about Mr. Stanfill, he was solid. He was tough. He was physical. And the thing about him, you never heard him complain. Ultimate teammate. Outstanding football player. And the University of Georgia football nation should be proud of him. And the thing, when I did my research on Mr. Stanfill, he said 2 things that stuck out of my mind about his career as a football player. He said he was coached by 3 great coaches: Vince Dooley, Don Shula. The 3rd coach he named was Irk Russell. Said no better coach and no better role model. And then his love for the University of Georgia and Coach Dooley. And let me tell you something. I moved here in 1966 in October. And I became good friends with a lot of Georgia fans. 2 of them I want to dedicate the video today is Paige Bridgman and one of my best friends, Joseph Taylor, Sandy Springs graduate, 1981 class. And those 2 gentlemen love Georgia football, now understand. It's something that Mr. Stanfill said about his time under Vince Dooley. And these two men, I'm talking about Paige Bridgman and Joseph Taylor, they love Vince Dooley's bath water. But Mr. Stanfill said this about Coach Dooley. The reason I like Georgia, and I love Georgia, was Coach Dooley. He didn't only shape football players, he shaped us as men. And then finally, you know why I like doing these videos on old school players? And I give kudos and respect to the legends of the game from a college and professional standpoint. It's simply this. They gave it everything to the game. Everything. They would give their arms, their legs, their hearts. And Mr. Stanfill said this. I love the game of football. And it's what I really loved about him and admired about him. Probably the strongest statements at any football player that I've been doing on these videos since I've been doing this for 2 years. What he gave up, his love of the game. When Mr. Stanfill retired, he had 4 disc fused in his neck. Had surgery on both his hips. A bad disc in his lower back. But he said he would not replace anything for playing football at the University of Georgia and becoming a Super Bowl champion on an undefeated team in 1972 with the Miami Dolphins. He gave up everything. Passed away some years ago. But the gentleman you looking on the screen there, 4 discs fused in his back when he retired. A bad disc in his lower back. 4 discs fused in his neck. A left hip that had to be replaced. Not both hips, left hip. I got that information wrong. But he wouldn't change nothing about the game. In Mr. Stanfill, his final words. Even though I enjoyed my time with the Miami Dolphins, but my greatest time in my greatest life was from 1965 to 1968, playing football at the University of Georgia, and go Dogs, and playing under Vince Dooley, and beating Steve Spurrier in 1966, and ruined his dream and the Florida Gators' dream of going undefeated that year. That's why Steve Spurrier has a total disliking for the University of Georgia. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. I surely appreciate it here at 100 Yards Football. To my producer, Mr. Logan Landers. Boy. Bill Stanfill. What more can you say? I think about this band called Steppenwolf. And they had a song in a movie called Easy Riders. Excuse me. And it starred Dennis Hopper and Peter Fonda. And as I just mentioned, they had a song, Born to Be Wild. Well, Bill Stanfill, when he played at Georgia, And then he went on and took his pro career to the Miami Dolphins. He was born to be wild. Get your motor running, doom, 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 doom. Head on the highway, doom, 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 doom. Looking for adventure, doom, doom, doom. And whatever comes my way, born to be wild. To the Georgia football nation, y'all should be proud of Bill Stanfill, because he set the tone of the Georgia Bulldogs to be born to be wild. I'm sorry. I'm jealous of what's going over there in Athens right now. What more can you say? You won a national championship this year under Kirby Smart. 15 players drafted in the 2022 NFL draft. If you're not a Georgia football fan, and all the disappointments y'all had in recent years and teams that were so close to winning it all, and got great players that set the foundation in Mr. Bill Stanfill, and where your football program is at right now under Kirby Smart, I can't say no more. I'm jealous of Dog Nation, baby. If you like the video, please come in and share it. I'm Mr. Football, Vincent Turner.